Charles Barkley and Charles Oakley are legends. Both great players, both notorious personas, both unafraid of confrontation. Each Charles has slapped the other Charles in the face. Charles Barkley is one of the greatest players ever, a former MVP, while Charles Oakley was more of an unsung hero known for his defense. But the two have plenty in common, more than just 11 letters in their names. Both entered the basketball scene as underrated prospects who held chips on their shoulders for the rest of their careers. Both rank among the greatest rebounders of all time. Both played on great playoff teams, but both fell short of a championship. The similarity most relevant to our story, though, is that Charles Barkley and Charles Oakley both speak their minds.
I don't know anything about Angola, but Angola's in trouble.
And both will gladly hurt you if you cross them. Oakley once threw a basketball at Tyrone Hill's face because of a gambling debt. Barkley once threw a guy out a bar window because he tossed ice at him. I could give more examples, but then this video would be like an hour long. The point is, you do not with a Charles unless you want to get hit by a Charles. Barkley was drafted by the Sixers in 1984 and soon became the face of Philly's post-championship era. Oakley joined the Bulls in '85 and developed into an elite tough guy, putting in some brilliant dirty work beside the ascending Michael Jordan. They occupied different niches, but they both loved to scrap and relished their battles from the beginning. Barkley was impressed by Oakley's energy and his strength, but he made sure to belittle Oakley early on when he got outplayed by Moses Malone. And Oakley got comfortable talking right back. By 1987, any meeting between these two became a wrestling match. The defense was tough, the fouls were hard, and the physical play started to resemble beef. In a March '87 meeting between the Bulls and Sixers, a fight broke out, and the Charleses immediately took the opportunity to go at each other.
And now Barkley jumps in, and Oakley wants a piece of Barkley.
But this was the '80s. In an era where play was more physical and dudes fought all the time, these Oakley-Barkley battles were nothing special. They fought and trash-talked on the floor and bickered over who was the true rebounding king. They surely crossed paths off the floor too, since Barkley was one of Michael Jordan's best friends and Oakley was basically his bodyguard. But Oakley was soon separate from Jordan, traded to the Knicks in 1988. And in Oakley's first year as a Knick, New York met Barkley and the Sixers in the first round of the playoffs. It was a war. There were hard fouls, shoves, and technicals. The Knicks dominated the series, and Oakley's physical play got under Barkley's skin. When Barkley missed the overtime game winner in Game 3, sealing a New York sweep, the Knicks taunted Philly by pushing brooms around the floor. Nonetheless, Barkley insisted he and Oakley were friends and would remain friends forever. Honestly, though, I believe he meant it. We'll talk about this more later, but I don't think Barkley has ever taken this feud seriously. When he grew tired of Philly in the early 90s, he welcomed the possibility of joining his rival on the Knicks. Chuck ended up traded to the Suns instead in 1992, and now he saw Oakley's Knicks just a couple times a year. Those two teams did have a legendary brawl in 1993, sparked by Kevin Johnson and Doc Rivers. Both Charleses were on the floor for that, but they didn't really engage. They did engage in the first half of a game in February '94. Barkley and Oakley got into it, and Barkley spun around and slapped Oakley right across the face. Then he ducked out of the way before Oak could hit him with a retaliatory punch. Barkley insisted he was just messing around with the slap, but Oakley didn't take it like that, as evidenced by, the part where he tried to punch him. With infrequent meetings between teams across conferences, Charles and Charles had to seize any opportunity to keep the beef alive. And that, friends, is how he ended up with a fistfight in an exhibition game. On October 25th, 1996, Barkley was a brand new Houston Rocket, getting acclimated to a co-star role alongside Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler. It was the preseason. The game didn't count. But Oakley wanted blood wherever he could get it, and he didn't waste time. 3 minutes into the game, Oakley tangled with Barkley, threw him to the ground, and things got very rowdy from there.
Whoa, there is no question, punches were thrown.
After the incident, Oakley insinuated that Barkley had it coming. Barkley just mocked Oakley and said he was on steroids. Oakley was suspended 2 games. Barkley was suspended 1, which delayed his Houston debut until a matchup with his former team. Chuck had 33 rebounds that night against the Suns. This isn't relevant, it's just holy shit. Anyway, Barkley continued to torment Oakley through their next meeting in the regular season. The Rockets crushed the Knicks in Houston, and after dominating Oakley, Barkley said he'd keep torturing him until he got an apology. He said he wanted to kill Oakley and made steroid jokes again. Oakley couldn't do much about it but stew. He hated what he perceived as star treatment for Barkley from the NBA, and you could just tell he needed some measure of revenge. But Barkley's career was winding down. they'd only face each other twice more. By February of '98, Barkley was a reserve player for Houston, but he kept poking the bear, even from the bench. Oakley got the better of him in that game, but it wasn't quite the satisfaction he needed. No, that satisfaction would come off the floor. In June of 1998, the Knicks traded Oakley to the Toronto Raptors for Marcus Camby. Just a few days later, the longest lockout in NBA history began. In December, a group of restless players put on a charity game in Atlantic City. During the event, Barkley went up to Oakley's now former teammate Patrick Ewing and told him the trade was an upgrade. He reportedly said Oakley was a hard worker, right? That tells you all you need to know about his game when all people can say is that he works hard. Word got back to Oakley, and Oakley got back to Barkley. A few weeks later, the NBA Players Association convened for one last push to reach an agreement with the league. Former NBA player Chucky Brown recalls standing near Barkley in a hallway when Oakley approached, looking angry, and then
he walks up to Charles Barkley and it's like, yo, what was up you were saying? And so Barkley just kind of looked at him and Oakley over there and slapped him.
Barkley supposedly denies that this happened, but Oakley does not.
You know, you got to lay down the law sometimes. Like, I think about 400 guys saw us.
The two Charleses only played one more game against each other before their careers ended. It was just a couple months after the slap. Barkley apparently wanted nothing to do with Oakley in that game, so Oak threw an elbow at Hakeem Olajuwon instead, which I'm mostly telling you so I can show you this wonderful Hakeem quote. But anyway, basketball beef over, right? Barkley talked a lot as a player, and immediately after he retired, it became his job to talk a lot. Barkley speaks with even less of a filter as a TV analyst, and Oakley doesn't like it. This quote is from 2010. Oakley has since discovered Twitter and used it to repeatedly go after Barkley. His main issue is basically that Barkley criticizes today's players, but ostensibly gets a pass for trouble he got into when he was playing. In 2016, after the Cleveland Cavaliers set a playoff three-point record in a blowout win against the Hawks, Barkley suggested Atlanta should have gotten physical to send a message.
The team is just embarrassing you. You have to knock the hell out of them, Ernie.
Oakley is from Cleveland and didn't like that. But Barkley basically put the beef on Oakley.
Charles Oakley doesn't like me, which is no big deal. I don't like him or dislike him. I don't think about him. He's not important enough for me to think about.
And Oakley didn't exactly refute what Barkley said.
I don't have to get along with Barkley. I mean, we used to be around Mike together here and there.
In 2017, when Barkley had a war of words with LeBron James, Oakley fired off another tweet. It really does seem to be a Cleveland thing now. There have been rumors recently of a potential peacemaking effort, but these two NBA legends just might not be made for each other. Their personalities are a perfect storm. Barkley really may not have any strong feelings about Oakley.
He don't like me. I have no idea why.
I think I know why.
He's just a notorious troll who says what he feels, even if it bothers people. Oakley is a notorious grouch who's easily bothered and doesn't forget a grudge. If you drop those two characters into the same hyper-aggressive era of basketball, the same circles of friends, the same union, and the same public dialogue, well, what do you expect? Some beef is just inevitable.